Thank you, everybody. The first time we were here was October of last year, and there's a little plaque on our booth. We've done quite well since then, but I think a turning point was definitely coming to Chicago and meeting the great people here, and I'll chalk it up to that anyways. And I know we've got lunch soon, so what I'm going to try to do is move through the presentation fairly quickly, and if I gloss over anything that you think is important, please just stop me in the end and ask me a question, or you can come by the booth afterwards. So Kivalliq Energy Corporation is a Canadian-based or Vancouver-based company that has a uranium exploration project in northern Canada, and we trade on the venture exchange under the ticker symbol KIV. I don't expect you to read all of this or remember it. Effectively, our market cap is a little over $60 million. We've got working capital of roughly $10 million. And as far as our team goes, I'd say I'd stack up our team against any other as a northern specialist or northern exploration group. We've got a board and management team that has lots of experiencing finding, acquiring, advancing, exploring, and basically running the corporate governance for northern Canadian exploration projects. Of note, recently we have a new board member that joined our board, and I remember coming here in October, and a lot of people here had followed Hathor exploration. Does anybody, just raise your hand if you've heard of Hathor before. So Hathor was obviously one of the bright points of last year, and Dale Walster was one of the guys who was intricately involved and really actually vended a lot of the projects that became Hathor. It was called Rough Rider Uranium. He joined our board, and we have gained a lot of experience and credibility because of his joining our board. One of the things that I think is pretty important as well, and has been really important last year because it was pretty challenging, we have an amazing shareholder base, and in 5 phone calls I can tie up about 55% of the stock. So we've got a lot of shares outstanding, but those are held by very long-term investors. They're strong. They seem to have very deep pockets. Every time we go back to them for an additional financing, based on our success, they're always there for us. It's critical because if a company like ours, which doesn't make money in terms of revenues, if we get starved for capital, that means our project will slow down and stall. So we have an amazing shareholder base, and it's global in nature now. London, Belgium, Hong Kong, Dubai, Switzerland, and of course Vancouver and Toronto, and I think in Chicago as well, or definitely in the Midwest. So we're working on that as well. This is a lot, but it's a pretty amazing picture. The quote, "The best of times, the worst of times," certainly fits for the year 2011. And Lumina Capital invested us. They're a group out of Vancouver that has had tremendous success in the mining sector, and actually they run mineral exploration companies themselves. They invested in us, and we got a big bump in the market because of that. They continue to finance us, and we put together a 16,000 meter drill program in order to put out our first 43-101 compliant resource, which came out here as the uranium market was running, and the stocks associated with the uranium business were running as well. And then one day I heard from a friend of mine that there was an earthquake in Japan, and I thought it was so far away that it wouldn't affect me, but it evidently had a pretty massive effect on the people of Japan, and that is very sad. And in addition to that, it had a major effect on our industry, and you could see the share price coming right off. And I think if you look at any other uranium company, minus Hathor, they also had a similar type of chart. And a real turning point was here in October, and that's around the time that I met you folks. But at that point, it was sort of maximum pessimism in the market, and then that was the dark before the dawn, before the uranium issuers started coming back and moving back. So one of the exciting things happened after I met you for the first time is that we actually put out a big increase to our resource, which I'll talk about now. It's a uranium resource from our project in northern Canada. That just paints the picture. But the takeaway is that despite Fukushima and despite this massive destruction of value, we were actually able to put together the largest exploration program in our company's history, and we doubled the size of our resource, proving to the market that we've got that potential to really grow, and we're truly a growth story. This map is telling a number of different things, but basically it shows four regions of Canada. You've got Saskatchewan down here, which hosts the prolific Athabasca Basin, and that's where Hathor the acquisition of Hathor was the Rough Rider deposit. And on the eastern margin of the Athabasca Basin, they produce almost 20% of the world's primary uranium production. And the big boys have moved in. We've got Cameco, Areva, and Rio Tinto controlling the basin. There's a lot of similarities between this basin and the Thelon Basin, which is up in Nunavut, the Baker Lake Basin, also in Nunavut, and then our two sub-basins. We're effectively the controlling company in these two sub-basins. We have over 600 square miles of prospective land that we're exploring. Another big thing for this region is that Areva, the giant out of France, is working through the permitting process for the Kivalliq deposit, and Cameco as well. You may recognize the names from down here. They're up there as well. Cameco has made 2 discoveries in the last 3 years. So you've got the 2 big companies globally making a play in Nunavut and making sure that, and they both have a vested interest in Areva's Kivalliq project being approved in the permitting process. So certainly there is a very thriving uranium exploration development business in our territory. Our project was discovered in the mid-70s and left fallow as the wheels fell off the uranium business in the 80s and right up until sort of first couple years of 2000. And we're now picking up where they left off. I'm not going to go into this whole slide, but if you hear about jurisdictional risk, you definitely want to factor that into your investment philosophy. And one of the key advantages that we have as a company is that we're partnered with the local Inuit, the local people, and they're our business partner on this project. We're actually 10% of our property is on Inuit Owned Land, and the Inuit are a group of people local to Nunavut Territory, and they're actually the largest landholder in all of North America. They're very savvy business people, they're very pro-mining, and they're an excellent partner to have. So we've got lots of local support. They're not government, but they're actually representing the people of Nunavut. Just give you a shot here. You might think, well, that's the dead of winter, but actually that was taken last week. And we built an airport in front of our camp in Nunavut. And I just want to show you that even though it is remote and even though it is in the north of Canada, that doesn't matter. If the prize is big enough, we'll figure out a way to get in there. And if you've ever seen a snowcat or a groomer on a ski hill, we actually use those to transport goods in and out of a community north of us called Baker Lake. And we built an airport on the lake in front of our camp, a mile-long strip, 6 feet of ice, and we're landing these Dash 7s on there regularly, moving stuff in and out. And next week we'll have our first Hercules aircraft, C-130, landing on there, bringing in stuff from Churchill, Manitoba. So it's actually highly efficient, very safe, very rapid, and it gets everything we need in, and it supplies us for the summer months. But we're pretty proud of that. The guys are really excited. There's another shot. You can see just some of the equipment we have. It's actually pretty simple, a very cost-effective way of bringing stuff in. There's some of the guys. That's the preferred mode of transport between the camp and our big bustling airport as well, and some of the local guys. And just you see how it works up there. We've got 35 people in camp right now, 2 rigs rolling, full blast. So we're not slowed down by the snow. There's a lot of information there, and all this is available on our website. But I just want to show you here, this is the program budget, and these are the years. And you can see there's major growth. Our budget this year is $20 million. So we're getting the support from the investment community as we prove that this thing has growth potential, and our budget has been increasing accordingly. And all this work last year went to this. We almost doubled the size of our known inferred resource. It's a very high-grade uranium project on a global basis. On an Athabasca Basin project basis, it's actually lower grade, and a lot of people look at fission or Hathor numbers and don't think that's a high grade. But if you look at any project in Africa or in the continental U.S. or in South America, that's a very high-grade uranium deposit. We also have some good silver numbers there, copper, moly, and on a property-wide basis, we've got lots of polymetallic potential. Just want to give you a sense of this is a geophysical image and a map looking straight down, and we use the geophysics to target our drilling. The deposit, you can see the black lines, those are actually the drill holes that we've drilled, And the brown area there is the actual deposit in the inferred category. And you can see how this thing looks. It's almost like a book, a very thin deposit that goes on and on for miles and miles, and we're just sort of drilling it along. It's open in all directions and at surface. And really, the deposit that we've defined now is just based on our drilling. It is not being cut off. It was basically based on the amount of capital we had at our disposal to drill it. So it's not like it's geologically cut off. We just didn't have the funds up until recently to actually drill it and prove it. But you're looking at a long deposit broken up into 3 zones. This we call the main zone. It's about a mile long, and on the either side there's the eastern and western extension. So you look there at this deposit, and maybe you saw the pink or magenta squiggles like worms on the surface there, surrounded by green. That is the surface expression of the deposit. So one of the targeting techniques that we've been using is geophysics, and this is looking straight down on a little area of our property, and we've drawn red ovals around where the deposit is. So that's the eastern extension, that's the main zone, and that's the western extension. And these little dots are actually where we set our drill rig up, and we drilled into this body and we defined the resource. And obviously there are similar looking geophysical targets elsewhere on the property, and that's exciting. So we then have to determine which ones of these are potentially carrying uranium. So what we do is we get prospectors out nosing around and picking up samples, and then we also, last year for the first time ever, we brought a reverse circulation rig, and we were testing some of these targets, and we found that they were also running. And in last year and the last drill hole of 2010, the eastern extension was discovered, the western extension was discovered, and then both of those were brought into our new resource calculation. The pulse was discovered, the blaze was discovered, and the spark. So all of these things are moving us towards showing that we might be able to build some sort of center of gravity here around, sort of surrounding within a 2-mile concentric circle from our main zone. So the drills are currently here. There's one drill here, and there's one drilling the pulse. And what we're trying to show is to prove our thesis that the Lac Saint Conte is not a unique deposit. In fact, there's a whole bunch of them, and they're all in the same area. This is important. This is the unconformity. So this is a sandstone basin. This is a volcanic rock package, the basalt. So in places like the Athabasca. So I got 3 minutes left. Is that what that means?
What does that say?
7. I was hired for my looks.
You can see it.
Why are you laughing? Okay, there we go. So I'll wrap this up quick. Basically, it's a great area to look for uranium deposits, and we're just scratching the surface. I'm going to go right through this. Okay, so there's a lot of noise in this as well, but that area you were just looking at is that yellow star. Our property is over 600 square miles, and it's encompassed in this blue box. We straddle 2 sandstone basins, and these red dots that seem to be random, really, there's obviously some sort of broader trend going across our property, but that's about 20 miles from this target to the star, the area you were just looking at. And these red circles are representative of prospecting samples, so they're not going to be representative of any potential deposit that's found, but it does show us that it's a highly juiced area. So 10% U3O8 are the big, greater than 10% are the big circles, and it moves down from there. But generally what we're saying is this property is juiced, it's highly mineralized, and we're working very hard to identify different deposits. So we have a third rig that's actually positioned right here, and it'll be testing this target within the next week. And there's an example of one of the targets. Just to give you a sense really quickly, we've taken grade of known to sort of peer group comparisons around the world, and number of millions of pounds, and high grade deposit, kind of in line with Stratico's Matouche, Rockgate's Philia, higher grade, and then obviously it's our job as a company to start moving that bubble to the right. We have to grow the size. That's our prime goal. So here's a comp table just to give you a sense of what all this means. Kivalliq, property name, stage of project, the grade, and sort of number of pounds, and our market cap. We like to throw this up here: Hathor, the Rough Rider deposit, the number of million pounds, and the bid for Rio was about $650 million. So obviously there's upside in developing a nice resource that the players in the global stage would like to buy, and it isn't always necessarily about putting a mine into production. It is about, in our case as an exploration company, is proving as much as we have possible on the property. So here's some other competitors. You've got, or peers as I like to call them, Stratico, Rockgate, with similar type of numbers and market caps. And Fission is a company that lots of people follow because they have a very high-grade project, a high-grade resource adjacent to the Roughfire deposit that Rio bought from Hathor. The key takeaway, though, in this is that there are a very limited number of uranium explorers out there with high-grade or viable deposits. There are a few that are here. You can go out and meet them. But sort of outside of a very small group, maybe 10 players, the list is very short. So I think that the general consensus is that when the uranium price starts moving again and the investment community starts keying into uranium and uranium issuers, that list will be very short, and we've obviously got massive upside based on that. Just to run through, I'm not going to go through this entire slide, but generally the budgets we put together a program and budgeted about a $20 million program this year in 2 phases, and our meterage is up significantly from last year because of the results. Our real focus is discovery elsewhere on the property and growing pounds in the ground to increase that resource number. To wrap it up, I've talked about the team. I think we're very well suited for the project, to finance it, to grow it, to run the exploration and the logistical programs. We have a very strong shareholder base, and the Inuit partnership with NTI, I think it's critical to reduce jurisdictional risk. We've got a great project, and the discoveries and the growth in the resource, I think, proves it. Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening.